What the heck? Did I just see a penguin? Where am I? Wait, my map says I'm in New Zealand? Huh? Climate change, animal cruelty, what the heck is going on? I would expect to see a kiwi or a sea lion, not a penguin. Okay, New Zealand is home to 3 species of penguin. Oh. 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 Big bird. Oh my god, penguins are taking over my submarine. I'm so happy. But no, bad time for excitement. I think it's illegal for me to approach them, so I'm hiding. But wait, it's fine if they're the ones who approach you, right? The rules do not preclude a curious penguin from approaching within 5 meters of you. Oh, hi there. Okay, dudes, pack it up. Let's go, let's go. How'd you even get inside? Did these penguins escape from a zoo, or are they on vacation? Why the heck are they in New Zealand? So I went on a quick research adventure, the good old online search, and found this penguin guide from 2022. Apparently, there are 18 recognized living penguin species in the world, with 6 genera representing their great diversity. Some sources say 28 species because taxonomy is hard with subspecies debates and all that regional variation stuff. Give that a quick look if you're feeling bold enough. And it never crossed my mind, but only the Emperor and Adélie penguins can be found deep in the Antarctic continent. The others, well, some of them don't even step foot on Antarctica. Beyond the main Antarctic continent, there are things called sub-Antarctic islands. And spending a quick afternoon reading up on the native animals on these islands, I was, surprisingly for the first time, introduced to the other penguin species like the king, macaroni, Fordland, blah blah blah. I didn't know any of this. My limited penguin education spun a wildly incomplete conclusion that penguins only hung around the Antarctic continent, and I thought they only existed beyond due to human intervention, or if they somehow ended up like this dude. Yeah, poor guy. But Africa and Peru? The Galapagos penguin along the equator? Penguins are almost everywhere following these standards. If that's the case, surely it seems logical that a swimming and waddling flightless bird around New Zealand, that encounter would be expected. But what's this? Approximately 56 to 78 centimeters, has a diet of red cod, blue cod, Call of Duty Black Ops, and orange eyes. I think, or green? I'm colorblind, I don't know, but this is truly a fascination discovery. A discovery that I will claim as my own, and I shall call it the probably orange-eyed penguin. Nah, I'm kidding. It's officially called the yellow-eyed penguin or the hoiho. But that's just one of the penguins native to New Zealand. There's also the smallest penguin in the world, and the one whose name is bounded, locked, and inscribed by the very land it resides. Truly, one of the names of all time. But I was particularly interested in the yellow-eyed penguin. What's the story of this penguin, and why New Zealand? Oddly broad questions for this specific species, but I can't help but be prompted to wonder. Of the information I've encountered about this particular penguin, a large majority of them highlighted issues of conservation. According to the IUCN Red List, they're endangered. They have a very small breeding range with severe habitat degradation in many areas, extreme population fluctuations plus severe declines in mainland regions. I looked up the species in my university's online library archives, and many of the top searches were about the poor conditions causing their population's decline. For example, this was about climate change and its effects on prey availability, and this was about an avipox virus that is causing significant mortality rates. Within the comfort of my safe room, skimming through the papers could merely provide an upsetting read. But looking out into the world, that was where that knowledge gave me a glimpse of a depressing reality that, well, I can only imagine. Regardless, even just looking at the headlines of the other papers without reading further, I don't know. It's a lot, I guess. To turn to a more literary reflection, It reminds me of the first book of Lord of the Rings, where the elves began leaving Middle-earth to reside in the peaceful land of Valinor to the west, away from the troubles of mortal lands. Elves who seldom walked the Shire could now be seen passing westward through the woods in the evening, passing and not returning. But they were leaving Middle-earth and were no longer concerned with its troubles. Sam believed he had once seen an elf in the woods and still hoped to see more one day. They are sailing over the sea. They are going into the west and leaving us, said Sam, half chanting the words, shaking his head sadly and solemnly. If you know about Sam's fascination with the elves, then it's clearly a very sad moment. The stories he's heard from Bilbo and Gandalf, the anticipation of eventually seeing elves for the first time, and you end up seeing them like they're fading. I remember first reading about the yellow-eyed penguin. It might even reflect your first time too if you haven't heard about them before. You might encounter information about how their population is decreasing, and it's like you learn about something for the first time. It's so interesting, and then you want to see them one day, only to find out that it's fading away. The following adventures are then characterized by the urgent desire to experience their presence before they're all gone. Fascination and imagination, followed by urgency, followed by even more urgency. What can you even do? This is the sort of context I like to keep in mind as we briefly look at penguins, that they may be numerous in stories. You might even see them every day on New Zealand currency. But in reality, well, I don't know. I haven't really seen them for myself. I'm too far away. But I heard that penguins are scattered throughout the southern hemisphere, and many varieties evolved to swim instead of continuing to fly. Some threatened and isolated in small colonies, and I don't know, definitely more than I can hope to understand with this brief video. But hearing that there's so much going on with today's penguin species, especially with rapidly changing climate, I think I want to try to explore penguins beyond the usual expectations, beyond the map of Antarctica, perhaps even beyond modern times, to the things that are already gone, leaving behind a faint and ambiguous shadow. Alright, so in 1837, Walter Manto traveled to New Zealand and settled in Wellington. And in one of his letters to his father, he mentioned that among the Maoris, or the natives, that gigantic birds taller than a man were formerly abundant throughout the islands, and that some of the oldest of the natives averred that they have seen such birds. These were the flightless birds called the moa, and in 1847, in hopes of learning more about the moa and whether it was still in existence, he explored every known locality of these relics, fossils in the North Island within his reach. But the natives offered no encouragement to further pursue the question, as the information he gathered from them tended to confirm that these gigantic Struthious birds had become extinct. But good news for the scientific community. Among the discoveries of the moa were other interesting findings. Walter Manto acquired 700 to 800 specimens, what his father called perhaps the most extraordinary collection of fossil remains of Struthian birds that has ever been transmitted to Europe. Wow. So okay, let's see what the dude brought back. The collection contained the crania, mandibles, eggs, and bones of several genera and species. Most, if not all, have probably been long extinct. And it was in this collection of fossils that they mentioned that some of the bones resembled those of albatrosses, parrots, water hen, and for the first time ever, potentially ancient penguins. But how does one determine such outrageous associations to mere bones? Penguins, you say? Ancient ones? What have you been eating? Starfishes? If you do a quick search or read anything on penguin fossils, Thomas Henry Huxley's name usually pops up. He was provided by his friend Walter Manto, who we just talked about, with a relatively large tarsal metatarsal bone from the tertiary deposits at Kakanui in New Zealand. He stated that in his analysis, which I won't even attempt to understand, demonstrates that it belonged to one of the penguin tribe, and he determined that it was larger in dimensions than any living species which have been observed. Huxley noted that its owner might have stood between 4 and 5 feet high, and in that view he proposed a new genus of Palaeodyptes to the penguin and designated the species name as Antarcticus. So basically Palaeodyptes antarcticus, which literally translates to ancient winged diver of the south. And then we never saw this penguin ever again. Yeah, what the heck? Okay, so what are the odds? Despite 150 years of fieldwork, no more material of Huxley's species has been found, and the age of the original fossil isn't clear, as it could have originated from 2 different limestones, both separated by about 10 million years. Oh my god. Throughout the years, people have classified certain specimens as Palaeodyptes antarcticus, ranging from late Eocene Australia to Antarctica, even though the species came from New Zealand. That's a wide distribution for just one species, and apparently it's because Palaeodyptes antarcticus became a sort of taxonomic wastebasket, a category for things that just don't fit anywhere else, which, if taken seriously, means that there was a giant penguin that would have been capable of traveling all over the place for millions of years without leaving much evidence. Suspicious indeed. So the idea is that we should just leave this species aside for now. Stop associating fossils to it, as it's kind of unproductive. But despite the poor fate of this lonely fossil, it marked the beginning of our understanding of prehistoric penguins and introduced us to the popular fun fact about them: that they were big.